He was 27 years old, former world number 1, 8 Grand Slams, Olympic gold, and he had just fallen to number 141 in the world. By every metric, Andre Agassi's career was over. His own words, "I was the most disconnected, unhappy person." He was playing challenger tournaments in Las Vegas, flipping his own scorecard. But in 1999 at the French Open, this Phoenix from Las Vegas did something that still doesn't make sense. He didn't just win a match, he didn't just beat seeds, he won the one Grand Slam that had always eluded him, and then he won Wimbledon in the same year. This is the story of the greatest comeback in tennis history. Here's how. To understand how far Agassi fell, you first need to understand exactly how high he stood. By 1995, Andre Agassi was not just the best tennis player on the planet. He was the most famous athlete in the sport. Full stop. The hair, the image, the commercials. But underneath all of it, a player of genuine, historic quality. In 1995, he defeated Pete Sampras, the greatest server of his generation, in the US Open final to claim world number 1. He had already won Wimbledon in 1992, the US Open in 1994, and the Australian Open in 1995. He won Olympic gold in Atlanta in 1996, 8 Grand Slams across his career. A man who had conquered every surface, every stage, every opponent the sport could throw at him. And yet, here is the first crack in the story. The one title that had always escaped him was Roland Garros. The French Open, the clay, the one slam that demanded patience over power, endurance over explosion. The one tournament where Agassi's game, brilliant as it was, had never been enough. That detail matters. Remember it. Now here is the fact that will make you stop scrolling. In his autobiography Open, Andre Agassi wrote 3 words that broke the internet before the internet existed. I hate tennis. Not I struggled with tennis. Not tennis was hard for me. He hated it. The sport that made him a global icon, that put him on magazine covers, that earned him millions. He despised it. He described it as a prison he was born into, a path chosen for him by his father before he could choose anything for himself. Think about what that means. The most famous tennis player on the planet, the man every kid wanted to be, was playing a sport he fundamentally did not want to play. That is not a footnote. That is the entire engine of this story. Because when a man who hates his job loses his job, the question isn't whether he'll recover. The question is, why would he even try? Between 1996 and 1997, everything collapsed at once. His marriage to actress Brooke Shields was deteriorating. His ranking, which had sat at the summit of the sport, began to slide, then accelerate downward. And in the middle of all of it, Agassi made a decision that could have ended not just his career, but his life. He used crystal meth. He admitted this in Open. Documented, verified, not rumor. He tested positive, lied to the ATP about it, and avoided suspension. He has been transparent about this in interviews since. This is not sensationalism. This is the reality of a man who had lost his compass entirely. By November 1997, Andre Agassi, former world number 1, 8-time Grand Slam champion, Olympic gold medalist, was ranked number 141 in the world. His own words, "I spent 2 years falling to 140 in the world. Everybody was surprised except me." Read that again. Everybody was surprised except him, because he knew. He knew exactly what he was doing to himself, and he did it anyway. That is not weakness. That is a man in complete psychological freefall. What makes this collapse uniquely brutal is the speed of the identity erosion. This wasn't a slow fade. Agassi had built his entire public persona around invincibility. The rebel who won anyway, the showman who delivered. When the results stopped coming, there was nothing underneath the image to hold him up. No foundation built on genuine love for the sport, no internal anchor, just a man staring at a ranking list that no longer recognized him. And then came the moment that crystallizes everything. Agassi entered a challenger-level tournament in Las Vegas. Not a Grand Slam, not an ATP Masters event. A challenger, the minor leagues of professional tennis. And in the final of that tournament, he lost to Christian Vink, a player ranked number 202 in the world. That is the single most visceral image in this entire story. Not the ranking drop, not the drugs. That specific loss, a former number 1 losing a challenger final to a man ranked 202nd, is the floor. That is rock bottom with a name and a scoreline attached to it. Here is where most comeback stories lie to you. They tell you the athlete found their passion again or remembered why they loved the game. That is not what happened with Agassi. Remember, he hated tennis. He didn't rediscover love for the sport. He found something more durable than love. He found purpose. Agassi has spoken about this shift in mindset. The moment he stopped playing for image, for his father, for the machine that had been built around him, and started playing for a reason he chose himself. That internal reorientation was the foundation of everything that followed. And then he did the work. He lost 16 pounds in 3 weeks as part of a deliberate physical transformation. Leaner, faster, more durable on slow clay. This wasn't cosmetic, it was a tactical recalibration of his body for the demands of a full season across all surfaces. He returned to the challenger circuit, not because he had to, but because he chose to. His framing of that decision is one of the most psychologically sophisticated things any athlete has ever said publicly. He reframed humiliation as ownership. He turned the minor leagues into a laboratory. Every match on a small court in front of a small crowd was a rep, a chance to rebuild his game, his body, and his identity from the ground up. What he was actually rebuilding on those challenger courts was his return game. Agassi's greatest weapon had always been his ability to read serve direction early and redirect pace, turning his opponent's power against them. At number 141, that timing was gone. The challenger circuit gave him hundreds of matches at lower pace to recalibrate that red, to rebuild the muscle memory of early ball striking without the pressure of ATP-level consequences. He wasn't just getting fit, he was rewiring his game from the contact point up. The results were not gradual, they were explosive. In 1998, Agassi won 5 titles. 5. In a single season, coming off a ranking of 141. By the end of 1998, he had climbed back into the top 4 in the world. That is not a comeback, that is a detonation. But the real test was still coming, because the French Open, the one slam that had always beaten him, was waiting. 1999. Roland Garros, Paris. Agassi arrived at the French Open having never won it. In a career full of Grand Slam titles, this was the gap, the clay court major that had always exposed the limits of his game. The conventional wisdom said Agassi was a hard court player. Fast surfaces, flat ball striking. Roland Garros rewarded patience, topspin, and the ability to grind through 5-set wars on slow red clay. But the version of Agassi that arrived in Paris in 1999 was not the same player who had failed on clay before. The 16-pound weight loss had made him more mobile laterally, critical on clay, where court coverage determines rallies, not pace. His rebuilt return game meant he could neutralize heavy topspin serves that had previously pushed him deep behind the baseline. And the 1998 Challenger season had given him something no amount of talent can manufacture. Match toughness under pressure, accumulated rep by rep on courts nobody was watching. He won Roland Garros. At 29 years old, Andre Agassi completed the career Grand Slam, joining an elite group of players who have won all 4 majors. He did it not at his physical peak, not at his ranking peak, but 2 years after losing a challenger final to the world number 202. But he wasn't done. 6 weeks later, he won Wimbledon, on grass. A completely different surface, a completely different game. And then, later that year, he won the US Open, his second title at Flushing Meadows. 3 Grand Slams in a single calendar year. He reclaimed world number 1. In 1999, Andre Agassi won the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open, and returned to the top of the world rankings, from number 141 to number 1, from losing to the world number 202 in Las Vegas to completing the career Grand Slam in Paris. The math of that is almost offensive, and if you think the story ends in 1999, it doesn't. In 2003, at 33 years old, Andre Agassi became the oldest world number 1 in ATP history at that time. Note, Novak Djokovic has since surpassed that record. But in the context of Agassi's era, a 33-year-old reclaiming the top ranking was considered physiologically improbable. He was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 2011. The man who hated tennis, the man who fell to number 141. That man is now in the Hall of Fame with a career Grand Slam, 2 separate stints at world number 1, and a comeback that no sports psychologist has fully been able to explain. At his Hall of Fame induction, Agassi said this, "Rock bottom is an interesting place. I moved in and spent some time there." That line is not just quotable. It is a complete philosophy of elite performance compressed into one sentence. What Agassi's story actually teaches us, and this goes beyond tennis, is that the conventional model of athletic motivation is wrong. We assume elite athletes are driven by love of the game. Agassi proves that love is optional. What is not optional is ownership. The decision to take full responsibility for where you are, even when where you are, is the bottom. He didn't rebuild his career by pretending the fall didn't happen. He rebuilt it by going back to the challenger circuit and treating every match against players ranked 200th in the world as a privilege. That psychological reframe is the actual secret. Not the 16 pounds, not the new coach. The challenger courts were the same. The ranking system was the same. The French Open clay was the same surface that had beaten him for years. Nothing external shifted. What shifted was the internal decision to stop performing for an audience and start building for a purpose. That is a transferable idea. Not just for tennis. For any field where you have fallen further than you thought possible and are trying to figure out whether going back makes sense. The answer Agassi gives, through his actions not his words, is that going back only makes sense when you go back on your own terms. Ownership first. Results follow. If this story hit differently than you expected, subscribe to KT Tennis. This is what we do here. We go past the highlights, past the trophies, into the actual mechanics of how elite performers think, fall, and rebuild. Every week. And I want one answer from you in the comments. Is Agassi's comeback the greatest in sports history, not just tennis? Or does another athlete top this? Name them. Make the case. The debate starts right now. Thanks for watching. This is KT Tennis. We'll see you in the next one.